Hey everybody, how's it going? I've got such a special video for you today because we are taking a detailed look at one of the most important new cars of the year, the first ever fully electric Lexus sold right here in the USA, the RZ450E. And in this video, we are pushing all the buttons, talking about all the cool gadgets and gizmos, and finding out how does this car stack up against its chief competition, the Tesla Model Y and others. So I really can't wait to bring you this video because this car is super significant and it's just going to be a ton of fun today. But first, I want to give a huge shout out to our channel sponsor, Flow EV Chargers. They are makers of high quality, reliable charging stations for all your EV charging needs. All right, the RZ450E. Very exciting. Now this car rides on the Toyota Lexus TNGA platform, so it is closely related to the Toyota BZ4X, which I recently reviewed. But of course, being a Lexus, it offers several premium features and a much more premium design compared to the Toyota. And let's start there. What do you guys think of the new look of the RZ450E? So Lexus has a few design signatures which have made their way into the RZ450E, but with some evolution. So Lexus has been a big pioneer of what they call the spindle grille, which is a grill that looks like a spindle that you might wind silk or string onto. Well, of course, being electric, the RZ450E doesn't need so much airflow when compared to a gasoline vehicle. So they've actually transitioned that spindle grille technology to what they're calling the spindle body. So you can see the body lines here are still very representative of what Lexus is going for, but of course it has not nearly the same front end grille profile that a gasoline model does. Now, that isn't to say it doesn't have any cooling in the front whatsoever. It does have a smaller location down here along the front leading edge of the bumper, but that's basically it. Now, the design of this car, the overall profile is quite low, quite wide. I think it's a very attractive vehicle. The wheelbase and the length are the same as the Lexus RX. So even though you might be thinking, wow, that car is much smaller, right? It looks more NX sized. The overall length is pretty similar to an RX, but it's got a nice low kind of squat down profile. Now, if we take a look at the wheels, we have a couple of different wheel options. We have an 18-inch wheel, or this option, which is the 20-inch wheel. This one is wrapped in a Dunlop SP Sport Max tire. Very attractive wheel design. What's interesting is on the 20 here, they're not going for a very aero profile, right? I was kind of expecting to see a lot of these gaps filled in to maximize the aerodynamics of the wheel, but it's a pretty conventional looking wheel. However, if you go for the 20-inch wheel, you are going to see a fairly substantial hit on the range. And that's what we're going to talk about next, because that is the car's Achilles heel. Now, first of all, the charging location right here on the driver's side fender. I like this location, similar to like what you'd find in the Chevrolet Bolt. Push in on the panel, it folds open, and check this out, they actually incorporate a rubber gasket here, so there's no need to pull out a spunt for the J-plug. There is still a little cover for the CCS1 port there. You can close that up. Now, this vehicle has one battery, one powertrain configuration. It comes standard with all-wheel drive and a 71.4 kilowatt hour battery supplied by Panasonic. The range, with the 18-inch wheels, 220 miles according to the EPA. With the 20-inch wheels, 196. Now, how does that compare to this vehicle's competitors? Well, Lexus says that their competitive set is comprised of the Tesla Model Y, the Jaguar I-Pace, the Audi e-tron, the big e-tron, and lastly, the Volvo XC40 Recharge. Now, in my opinion, we could extend that out a little bit. So I personally think that this is closer related to like the smaller e-tron, the Q4 e-tron. I also think you have to consider the Hyundai Kia Genesis vehicles, the eGMP vehicles like the GV60 from Genesis, and then of course the Tesla Model Y is going to be the big elephant in the room. Now, the Tesla Model Y goes significantly farther on a single charge compared to the Lexus, so that's rated at 330 miles in the standard non-performance configuration versus 200 miles in this car. The other competitors, the Volvo, the Genesis, the Audi, the Q4 e-tron, those are going to be anywhere from like 220 to 250 miles. So in the small wheel configuration, the Lexus 220, kind of right up there in that competitive set, excluding the Tesla. But once you go for these 20-inch wheels, you're looking at a sub 200 mile range according to the EPA, and that is a little bit disappointing. Now let's talk about charging time. So Lexus is predicting a 0 to 80% charge time in 30 minutes. It peaks at 150 kilowatts. The onboard charger, the AC unit, 6.6 kilowatts, so 0 to full on AC, right around 9.5 hours. Those times are okay. You know, I'm glad to see that we're at least getting 150 peak on the DC charge rate. Now, we are going to have to run some charging tests through this car. This is just our first look out here in San Diego, California, so we're not going to have an opportunity to drain it empty and charge it up. But here's the thing, and Lexus told us outright. They said this car is intended to be a second or a third car. That is how they are predicting buyers are going to purchase the RZ, right? So maybe you're a family. They think that the person buying this is going to have a combined household income of over $175,000 a year. So they're kind of thinking that a family might already have like a Lexus RX or a Lexus NX, and they're looking for a second or a third car to commute around town, to go to the store in. RZ, right? I don't really think that they are intending this to be a long road trip vehicle, because they're actually offering 30 days worth of complimentary loaner vehicles for 3 years, over the course of 3 years, for buyers of the RZ450e. So the idea is, right, you bought an RZ450e, you're driving it every day, you're charging up at home, life is great. Oh no, I gotta go visit the in-laws several states away. I can go to my local Lexus dealer, I can borrow one of their loaner cars and drive that on my trip, come back, and then, you know, continue with my life on full electric. So the range on paper, you know, not as competitive nearly as like the Model Y, a little lower than some of its other competition, but they do have a couple solutions for those of you out there wondering. A couple other things worth noting on the outside. First ever available illuminated Lexus logo there. It illuminates whenever the headlights are on, and it also illuminates when the vehicle is charging. Pretty interesting. Oh, I also wanted to give a quick shout out to TFLbids.com, where I'm currently selling my fully electric Mini Cooper SE. I've been getting a lot of questions about that, but if you want more information, check out TFLbids.com. It's going up for auction right now, and it ends today, so kind of a fun opportunity. But anyways, on with the interior of the Lexus RZ450e. And the first thing you might notice, which is different compared to a lot of other Lexus products, is the door handle configuration. So rather than pulling out on the entire handle, there's a little button located behind the handle. You push that button, then the bodywork itself remains stationary, and then you can pull the door open. And check this out. So this interior is pretty bold. You got a bunch of different color options, but this is a thunderstorm over macadamia. So kind of a cool look, but it's essentially this almost light, more like a dark teal / blue, and then you've got the black bolsters here. And this material is called New Lux, so it is an animal-free material. Now it feels a lot nicer than your typical vinyl, and you can also option this vehicle with like a suede interior. But the one thing which is interesting is that the seat color is actually carried over underneath the carpet. So check that out. Lift that up, and that blue material continues onto the carpet. Pretty funky. Now, even though the RZ does share a lot of its body structure, a lot of its mechanicals with the BZ4X, the interior is pretty significantly different. So I've spent some time in the BZ4X. It's a nice car, but the overall dash layout and the feeling of the controls feels a lot more premium in the Lexus compared to the Toyota. So the BZ4X has this very funky cockpit design with this dashboard layout way in front of you, and then the digital gauges that you kind of look through this tunnel at. The Lexus is a little bit more conventional, so we do have a fully digital instrument cluster here, but it is not, you know, viewed through a channel. It's just in the standard location. And we got to talk about the steering wheel, because I think a lot of folks in the news remember that the RZ450e could be optioned with what's they're not calling it a yoke, but it's a drive-by-wire, flat bottom, flat top wheel. That is going to be available at a later time, but the RZ450e is launching with a conventional round steering wheel, conventional rack and pinion electrically assisted system. So for those of you wondering. Now let's talk about some of the standard features in the vehicle. I'm going to actually power it up. So foot on the brake, hit the power button there, and the main screen is going to whir into life. And this is a 14-inch display. Whether or not you get the premium or the luxury trim of the RZ, every version is going to have that 14-inch display running the latest and greatest in Lexus system. Very similar to what Toyota's doing. I do like some of the small details, like check this out. I don't know if you can see that, but the front end of the car, this icon, is actually a little tiny RZ450E, which is very cool. Now, while I'm in the driving page here, a couple of things worth noting. We've got normal, sport, eco, and range. So this car comes equipped with 2 electric motors, one in the front, one in the back, for a combined rating of about 308 horsepower. Now that is significantly more than the Toyota, which is in all-wheel drive like 214 horsepower. So we're looking at almost 100 horsepower more than the Lexus. And you can go through different modes, but range is interesting because it prioritizes the rear axle. Now that's not to say the front axle won't become active if, for example, you need to get through some snow or whatever, but it prioritizes the rear axle, which is rated at, I think, 80 kilowatts, and then the front axle is rated at like 150 kilowatts, and that's how they get to the 230 combined kilowatts. So it'll prioritize the slightly less powerful rear motor, but pretty cool. We got different drive modes. We also, of course, have the standard suites of LSS 3.0 Plus, so you can see all of the things that we have here. Lane departure warning, rear cross traffic alert, pre-collision system, we have adaptive cruise, we've got the full suite of Lexus safety systems as standard, which is just awesome. Now, a couple other things I want to talk about in this screen here. So everything is digital. We really don't have many hard controls at all. We do have these little toggles, or these little circles, excuse me, which you can turn to adjust the climate temperature. And I love the little display in there. I think that looks very, very nice. And then apart from that, just about everything else is going to be a touch button within the screen. We do have controls for the front defrost and the rear defrost, which is great. That's a safety item, easy to find regardless of where you're at in the screen. But if you want to activate the ventilated seats, there's a button. If you want to activate the heated steering wheel, there's going to be a button there. And if you activate the heated seats, you see those 2 little lines? Well, those lines indicate that your car is equipped with the radiant heating panels. And I think this is an interesting option. But Ian, if you want to look here, where you would typically find a glove box, what you find instead is this meshy material. And then if you look underneath the steering wheel here, similar thing, there's like this little meshy material pad, and these will actually heat up and provide some warmth and comfort for your legs as you drive along. And in combination with the heated seats and the heated steering wheel, the idea is that you can save some energy instead of using the main cabin climate control, which is potentially less efficient than these little heating pads. So kind of a funky thing there. Now, Lexus does say because of the heating pads, you don't get a glove box. So if you notice, there is no glove box in the RZ450E. Instead, they say you're supposed to use this little area underneath the dashboard console. I don't know if you can see that there. Now, I'm not super sure that this is the same kind of effectiveness as a glove box. First of all, it's not lockable, right? And all your stuff is kind of going to be spewed apart there, but that's what they're saying is going to be your alternative to not having a glove box, which is interesting. Now let's talk about some other interesting features on the RZ450E. First of all, the steering wheel has some of the softest material I've ever felt across the actual material surface. It just is such a premium feeling place to hold on to. And you also notice paddle shifters. You can adjust your regeneration modes using paddle shifters. So if you want to, let off the accelerator and have it slow down quickly, put more energy back into the battery, you can do so via these buttons here. Now, if you want to take a look here, Ian, at the main screen, pretty simple. You can actually see it doesn't quite fill out the whole cockpit area with the little screen, which, it is what it is, but it would be cool if it extended all the way to the edges of the cockpit. It doesn't do so. But if you kind of pan up just a little bit, Ian, I don't know if you can see the heads-up display there. That might be kind of tricky, but the full intuitive heads-up display, lots of controls, and then these little buttons here in the steering wheel are fully touch sensitive, so I can kind of, rest my finger on it and have it go through different settings there. Now let's talk about the door panel, right? Because this is interesting. So first of all, button. Electronic doors, in and out, you use a little button here. But the actual door panel is pretty simplistic, and Lexus says that's on purpose because, Ian, I'll take the camera, if you look over here on the edge of the dashboard, you can kind of see a little light. What Lexus aims to do is save some material, save the trees, keep this panel simple. And then at night, they actually project patterns here, which is supposed to give it a more premium feeling. So that's the idea of the rather simple, bland-looking door panel there. Now, apart from that, a couple other things worth noting. Wireless charger located here underneath the main screen. Got USB-C ports, 3 of them, 2 for charging. We've got 1 for connectivity there. Of course, the screen does have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, that kind of thing. Then moving back, gear selector. They said they designed this so you don't have to turn your wrist when changing gears. Instead, it's just a flick of the fingers. So you can go between neutral, park, and drive all without moving your wrist. Kind of interesting feature there. Moving back here, we've got parking brake. A little bit too much piano black here for my liking. At least this material is more of a scratch-resistant gray. Traction control off there. And then the center console lid flips upward as such. Now, one other thing I want to talk about is the glass roof. You want to show that, Ian? 2 panes, and you actually can change the transparency on the roof, so you can make it clear or you can make it opaque. And even if it's clear, it's got this protective coating on it so it won't heat up the cabin. They said there was a lot of intention in designing that feature. And then one other thing, Ian, over here, I can take the camera. We do have buttons for the seat memory, and then automatic high beams there on the stock. All right, I think it's time we go check out the rear space. One thing I will say, 6 feet tall, front seat headroom is really pretty good. You do sit quite low in the car. The sills are pretty high, so if you are a shorter individual, you definitely want to probably jack up that power seat, but it's all done via controls on the side. Sweet. All right, let's go see what the rear seat space is like. And while we're back here, Ian, we can take a look at the pricing on this model. So, pricing starts in the high $50,000 range. This model, as equipped, $63,415, and this is the 450e Premium with the 20-inch wheels. And here you can see some of the options. So the cold area package, $200. This one does have the digital rearview mirror, the illuminated front badge. It's gonna be $200. Premium paint. This is a new color called Ether, $500. Technology package, $1,425, and then dealer processing and handling, $1,150. So that's where they get the $63,415. Now, one thing I want to mention. I'm going to check my notes here so I don't mess this up. This vehicle is produced in Motomachi, Japan. It's actually produced in the same factory where they build the Lexus LC and where they have built the Lexus LFA. So they're kind of using that as a demonstration to prove that they think this is a really special vehicle. But because it's built in Japan, it's looking like it probably won't qualify for the $7,500 tax credit. So some of this vehicle's competitors, like the Model Y, assembled here in the US, does apply for the tax credit. That is definitely something worth noting. Now, we have 3 abreast seating in the rear here, almost completely flat floor, just a very small bump, very small intrusion. And then we've got 2 USB sockets here. Legroom, excellent, even at 6 feet tall. Headroom, pretty darn good. I'd say very good. This is a very good back seat. Lots of room. I'd be very comfortable here in a longer trip. A couple of cup holders when you fold that down. All right, let's go ahead and check out the trunk space. So, in the back here, a couple of interesting things. First of all, you got these little points. Lexus calls this a vortex generator. So it's supposed to be better for aero, it's supposed to be better in crosswinds, but it's not a spoiler that extends across the length. They said the reason for that is in crosswinds, right? They don't want to create a spoiler effect, or a foil effect. Can't talk. They don't want to create a foil effect from crosswinds pushing up on a rear spoiler. That's why they did the vortex generators. I think it looks a little goofy, but let me know what you think in the comments below. And they also said because of the sloping rear nature of the glass, it's got more of a coupe look and therefore it doesn't need a rear wiper. I'm not totally sure I agree with them. This is a vehicle that's going to be used in all sorts of climates, and being in Colorado, even with the sloping rear glass, I would love a wiper. Now back here, Lexus is spelled out in big bold letters. You do have this continuous red bar, which makes its way across the entire width of the vehicle. And then badging down here, RZ 450E Direct 4. And then these look like they should be vents, but they're blocked off. They don't appear to do much at all there. Anyway, lift open the power lift gate, just under 30 cubic feet worth of space back here. Let's see how the seats fold. We do have a view blocker. I'm going to fold this one down here, Ian, so you can see a nice flat load floor there as it transitions from the trunk space to the seat. And they say this car has one of the lowest liftover heights in the Lexus SUV lineup because the battery's in the ground. This is the included charge connector. It's just a level 1. Nothing too fancy there, right? Plug it in on 110, and I think it's like 50 hours to fully charge on 110. So it's not designed to really be charged on well, it is, right? But it's It's more ideal if you have a level 2 at home. And then you can close the trunk or lock it via a little button there. So, the RZ450e, a big, significant vehicle for Lexus, their first ever fully electric vehicle sold here in the US. There's a lot to like. I think the design is quite good. I love the fit and finish on the inside. I love the 14-inch standard screen. I haven't driven it yet. Driving impressions are still embargoed for just another few days. I'm a little disappointed on the range. The charging is a big question mark, and the value is also a question mark because 63 grand, right? Kind of right in line with its competitive set, but with that range, especially with the 20s under 200 miles, is that going to be good enough? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. A huge thank you to Ian behind the camera, and a big shout out to Sophion Bay. He's right there. Do you see him? He's driving away. He actually saved the day with this little dongle I forgot for the microphone. So a huge shout out to him. And as always, we'll see you in the next video. Oh, I almost forgot. Under the hood is no front trunk. You just have your motor, your inverter, that kind of thing located there. All right.